In the heart of the village of Omuoma, a child was born under a golden harvest moon. Her skin was the color of rich, polished mahogany, and her eyes held the depth of the midnight sky. The midwives whispered that they had never seen a child so perfectly formed from the womb. They marveled at her long lashes and the symmetrical grace that already defined her tiny, delicate features. Her mother, Ifioma, named her Amara, meaning grace, for she felt the heavens had smiled upon her family. She cradled the infant, unaware that this gift would soon become a burden of thorns. The neighbors gathered, but behind their forced smiles, a seed of comparison was planted deep. Even in the cradle, Amara's light was so bright it cast shadows on the hearts of the insecure. As the sun set on her first day, the village elders noted the unusual stillness of the air. It was as if the earth itself was holding its breath, acknowledging a beauty that would change everything. By the time Amara was 7, she walked with a natural elegance that no teacher could instill. Her laughter was like the tinkling of silver bells, echoing through the dusty paths of the village. Her childhood friends, Zola and Neka, would often watch her with a mixture of awe and growing resentment. While they struggled with tangled hair and stained tunics, Amara always seemed magically untouched by the grime. When they played hide and seek under the great Irako tree, the boys would always seek Amara first. They didn't understand why, but they were drawn to her like moths to a flame, leaving the others behind. Zola once pushed Amara into the mud, hoping to see her ruined and looking normal like the rest. To her horror, Amara simply stood up, wiped the dirt away, and smiled with a kindness that made Zola feel small. The village women began to gossip at the stream, wondering what charms Ifioma used on her daughter. They couldn't accept that nature, in its chaotic whim, had simply chosen Amara as its masterpiece. Sundays in Umuoma were for worship, but for the village girls, it became a silent competition. They would wear their finest lace and tie their gellies with practiced, trembling hands. Amara would walk into the church, her head held high, wearing a simple but perfectly tailored Ankara dress. The way the fabric hugged her frame made the most expensive silks of the other girls look cheap. The pews would ripple with whispers as she passed, and the young men would forget their prayers for a moment. The air would grow heavy with the collective sigh of women who felt their husbands' eyes wander. Zola and Neka would sit beside her, their faces masks of piety, but their hearts were cauldrons of bitterness. They felt like mere shadows standing next to a sun that refused to stop shining. Even the pastor once stumbled over his sermon when Amara smiled in the front row. The jealousy in the room was a tangible thing, a cold mist that thickened every time she adjusted her scarf. Market day was the pulse of the community, a riot of colors, smells, and loud haggling. Amara moved through the stalls like a queen visiting her subjects, though she meant no such thing. She would dress in vibrant oranges and deep purples that complemented her glowing complexion perfectly. Every vendor wanted her to stop at their stall, believing her beauty brought good fortune to their trade. "Amara, come and taste my mangoes," the old men would cry out, offering her the best fruit for free. Her friends, standing right behind her, would have to pay double for the bruised remnants. Neka would clutch her purse tight, her jaw clenched as she watched Amara receive gifts without asking. The unfairness of it burned in her throat like dry pepper, making every step a chore. They walked through the aisles of dried fish and yams, feeling invisible in the presence of a diamond. To be Amara's friend was to be the frame for a painting that everyone wanted to buy. It wasn't just her face. It was the way the universe seemed to conspire in Amara's favor. While other girls struggled to find suitors, noble men from neighboring villages sought her hand. One afternoon, a wealthy merchant arrived with a caravan of gifts, asking only for a moment of her time. He ignored the other girls who had spent hours painting their faces in hopes of his attention. "Your beauty is a song that reached my village across the river," he declared, bowing low. Amara thanked him with such genuine humility that it only made the onlookers hate her more. Zola whispered to Neka that Amara must be using juju to attract such high-profile men. They couldn't believe that her luck was simply the magnetic pull of a pure soul in a perfect body. Amara shared the sweets the merchant brought with her friends, thinking she was being kind. She didn't realize that every bite they took tasted like ash because it came from her hand. In the evenings, the youth would gather in the square to dance and tell stories under the moonlight. This was where the jealousy fermented, turning from a simmer to a rolling boil. The drums would beat a rhythm that called to the blood, and Amara would dance with a fluidity that looked like water. Her movements were a celebration of life, yet the girls saw it as an exhibition of pride. "Look at her, shaking her hips just to make us look bad," Neka hissed into Zola's ear. They sat on the sidelines, refusing to join in, casting dark glances that Amara mistook for tiredness. Amara would often stop dancing to pull her friends into the circle, wanting them to feel the joy. They would reluctantly stand up, their movements stiff and guarded, resenting her for forcing them to compete. She would laugh and hug them, telling them how beautiful they looked in the firelight. They would smile back, but their eyes remained cold, like stones at the bottom of a well. When the secondary school results were released, the village was stunned by the scores. Amara hadn't just passed. She had achieved the highest marks in the entire district. The teachers praised her, noting that her mind was as sharp as a razor and her memory was flawless. She didn't just memorize. She understood the world in a way that left the instructors in awe. Zola and Neka had struggled to pass, barely scraping by with the help of extra lessons. They had hoped that Amara would at least be airheaded to balance out her physical perfection. She probably charmed the examiners. The rumors began to spread through the village corridors. They refused to credit her hard work, preferring to believe she had cheated using her looks. Amara, ever the optimist, offered to help her friends study for the university entrance exams. She spent her nights explaining complex math, unaware that they were planning her downfall. The day the admission list was posted on the regional board was a day of high tension and prayer. The village gathered to see which of their children would journey to the prestigious University of Lagos. Amara's name was at the very top of the list for law, the most competitive course available. Her friends, Zola and Neka, managed to get into lower-tier courses through sheer luck and persistence. They celebrated together, popping bottles of local palm wine and dancing in the streets of Umuoma. Amara hugged them tightly, genuinely happy that they would all be going to school together. "We will be the three musketeers on campus," Amara exclaimed, her eyes bright with the prospect of the future. The friends nodded, but in their minds, they were already plotting how to outshine her. They saw the university as a fresh start, a place where Amara's village luck might finally run out. They didn't realize that a diamond shines just as bright in the city as it does in the dust. As the date for the matriculation ceremony approached, the village was buzzing with excitement. It was the official induction into the university, a rite of passage for the chosen few. Amara's father, a humble farmer, saved every penny to buy her a gown of pure, shimmering silk. He wanted his daughter to look like the star she was on her big day. Zola and Neka watched as the tailor delivered the gown, their eyes burning with a fresh wave of envy. Their own dresses were made of cheaper material, and they felt like peasants next to her. Amara spent hours helping them style their hair, offering them her own expensive jewelry to wear. She thought she was being a supportive friend, not realizing she was highlighting their lack. "You look so beautiful, Zola," Amara said, pinning a gold brooch to her friend's lapel. Zola looked in the mirror and saw only the brooch, hating the hand that had placed it there. The university campus was a sea of black gowns and colorful caps, the air thick with the scent of perfume and joy. Parents and well-wishers from all over the country had descended upon the grounds. When Amara stepped out of her dormitory, the world seemed to stop for a fleeting second. She was a vision of grace, her silk gown flowing around her like a midnight river under her cap. The crowd of people who came to celebrate her was overwhelming. Half the village seemed to have traveled just for her. There were uncles, cousins, and strangers who simply wanted to be near her light. In contrast, the space around Zola and Neka was sparsely populated, with only their immediate parents present. They stood in the shadows of the massive crowd surrounding Amara, feeling discarded and small. "Why are they all here for her?" Neka muttered, clutching her meager bouquet of flowers. The disparity was too much to bear, and the seeds of betrayal finally began to sprout. As classes began, it became clear that Amara was not just a pretty face in the lecture halls. She sat in the front row, her hand always the first to rise with a profound question or answer. The lecturers, men and women of high standing, were visibly impressed by her wit and dedication. They would often use her assignments as the gold standard for the rest of the class to follow. "Miss Amara, your analysis of the law of torts is masterful," Professor Okoro would say, beaming. Her friends, sitting in the back, would sink lower in their seats, their faces turning a bitter shade of gray. They tried to distract her with parties and late-night gossip, hoping her grades would slip. Amara would join them for a bit, but then return to her books, her discipline as firm as her beauty. She would share her notes with them, explaining the lectures they had slept through or ignored. They took her help greedily, then mocked her seriousness the moment she left the room. Amara truly believed that Zola and Neko were her sisters in this new, overwhelming world. She told them her secrets, her fears, and her dreams of becoming a great human rights lawyer. "I don't know what I would do without you guys," she told them one night over a shared bowl of noodles. She didn't see the look Neko gave Zola, a look of pure, unadulterated coldness. They would comfort her when she was tired, but their words were laced with subtle, poisonous barbs. "You work too hard, Amara. People might think you're trying to show off your intelligence," Zola would say. Amara would apologize, feeling guilty for her own success, and try to dim her light to make them feel comfortable. It was a dance of deception that she was too pure-hearted to recognize. She saw them as her protectors in the big city, not knowing they were the ones digging the pit for her. The enemies you keep close are always the most dangerous, for they know where your heart beats. It started small. A favorite pair of earrings went missing from Amara's jewelry box. She searched everywhere, convinced she had simply misplaced them in her busy schedule. "I'm sure they'll turn up, Amara," Neko said, while the earrings sat hidden in the bottom of her own trunk. They watched her distress with a secret, perverse pleasure, enjoying the crack in her composure. Then, a beautiful lace blouse she had saved for a special dinner vanished from her wardrobe. Amara began to doubt her own memory, wondering if the stress of school was making her forgetful. She asked her friends if they had seen it, and they looked her in the eye and lied without blinking. "Maybe a maid took it," Zola suggested, shifting the blame to someone innocent and invisible. Amara chose to believe them, refusing to think that her best friends could be capable of theft. She even apologized for asking, feeling bad that she had momentarily doubted their integrity. While Amara was busy studying, Zola and Neko were busy whispering in the ears of her classmates. They began to spread lies that she was only getting good grades because she was close to the professors. "She spends a lot of time in Professor Okoro's office after hours," Neko would whisper to a group of girls. The rumor spread like wildfire, tainting Amara's hard-earned reputation with the stench of scandal. People began to look at her differently in the hallways. Eyes that once held admiration now held suspicion. Amara felt the shift in the atmosphere but couldn't pinpoint the source of the coldness. When she asked Zola why people were acting strange, Zola simply shrugged and said, "People are just jealous of you, Amara." It was the ultimate irony, using the truth to hide the fact that they were the architects of the jealousy. Amara cried on their shoulders, thanking them for being the only ones who truly knew her heart. They held her and patted her back, their faces twisted in silent, triumphant smirks. An international internship opportunity arose, and only the top 3 students were invited to apply. Amara's application was perfect, her essay a moving piece on justice and equality. The day before the deadline, her application folder went missing from her desk in the library. She panicked, tearing her room apart, crying out for the lost chance to change her life. Zola and Neko helped her search, looking in places they knew the folder wasn't. They had already burned the papers in the incinerator behind the dorms the night before. "It's okay, Amara. There will be other chances," Neko said, pretending to be sympathetic. Deep down, she was ecstatic that Amara had missed the deadline and wouldn't be leaving them for Europe. Amara missed the application, and for the first time, her spirit seemed to flicker and dim. She felt like the world was suddenly against her, not realizing the world was sitting right across the table. One morning, Amara woke up to find her favorite large mirror in the dorm room shattered into 1,000 pieces. A note was left behind that said, "Beauty is fleeting, but ugly is forever." She stood there trembling, the shards reflecting her shocked and tearful face in a distorted mosaic. The cruelty of the act was so direct that she finally began to feel a chill of true fear. Zola and Neko walked in and gasped, pretending to be horrified by the vandalism. "Who would do such a thing?" Zola cried, while she hid the hammer she had used in her laundry bag. They convinced Amara that it must be a rival from another department who was jealous of her looks. They painted a picture of a wide, nameless enemy to keep her from looking too closely at them. Amara cleaned up the glass, cutting her finger in the process, the blood a bright red contrast against the floor. She felt exposed and hunted, her beauty now feeling like a target painted on her back. The university was hosting a grand gala, and Amara was nominated by the student body as the Face of the Year. It was an honor she hadn't sought, but one she accepted with her usual grace. Zola and Neka convinced her to wear a dress they had picked out for her from a local boutique. They told her it was the latest fashion, though they knew it was gaudy and ill-fitting. "You look like a star, Amara," they lied as she stepped into the bright, unflattering fabric. They wanted her to be mocked, to finally see the crowd laugh at the perfect girl. However, when Amara entered the ballroom, her natural radiance somehow made the ugly dress look avant-garde. Her confidence and bone structure transcended the fabric, and the room went silent in awe. Instead of laughter, there were gasps of appreciation, and the Face of the Year award was hers by a landslide. Zola and Neka sat in the corner, their plan backfiring so spectacularly they could barely speak. To celebrate her win, the friends brought Amara a special skin cream they claimed was from a high-end spa. In reality, they had mixed it with an irritant that would cause a painful, red rash. "Use it tonight. It will make your skin glow even more for the photos tomorrow," Neka suggested. Amara thanked them with a hug, her heart full of love for her sisters. That night, as she applied the cream, her skin began to burn with an intensity she had never felt. She washed it off quickly, but the damage was done. Her face was red, swollen, and stinging. She woke up in tears, unable to attend the winner's photo shoot, her beauty hidden under a mask of inflammation. Zola and Neka spent the day nursing her, secretly enjoying every sob she let out. "Don't worry, you're still beautiful to us," Zola said, her voice dripping with a fake, sugary sweetness. This was the first time Amara felt a small spark of suspicion, a tiny voice asking why this kept happening. A week later, while the rash was fading, Amara returned to the dorm early to pick up a forgotten textbook. She heard voices from inside. Zola and Neka were laughing loudly, their guards down. "Did you see her face? She looked like a red-spotted toad." Neka's voice rang out, harsh and mocking. Amara froze in the hallway, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "And she actually thanked us for the cream. She's so stupidly beautiful. She thinks everyone is as nice as her," Zola added. The sound of their laughter felt like physical blows to Amara's chest. She stood there, paralyzed, as the pieces of the last few months began to click into place. The missing jewelry, the burned application, the rumors, the broken mirror, it was all them. She didn't enter the room. She turned and ran, her tears blurring the hallway as she sought the quiet of the library. The betrayal was a cold blade in her back, twisted by the hands she had held in friendship. Amara spent the next few days in a daze, watching her friends with new, enlightened eyes. She noticed the way Neka's eyes narrowed when a man looked at Amara, and the way Zola smirked when Amara made a mistake. She didn't confront them immediately. She wanted to see the full extent of their treachery. She played the part of the naive friend, but her heart was hardening into a shield of ice. She saw Neka go through her purse when she thought Amara was in the shower. She watched Zola delete an important email from a law firm on Amara's laptop when her back was turned. The pain was immense, a deep, soul-aching sorrow that made her want to scream at the sky. She realized that they didn't just hate her beauty. They hated her very existence because it highlighted their own voids. "How could I have been so blind?" she whispered to herself in the dark, the tears finally ceasing. She realized that her beauty was not just her face, but her resilience, and she would need it now more than ever. The university's final year project was the most important milestone, a thesis that would determine their career paths. Amara had worked tirelessly on a study regarding women's rights in rural Africa. The night before the submission, Zola offered to take the flash drive to the printing center to save Amara the trip. "You look tired. Let me do this one small thing for you," Zola said, her eyes wide and innocent. Amara handed it over, already knowing what would happen, but needing the final proof to break the tie. Zola didn't go to the printing center. She walked straight to the campus pond and threw the drive into the water. When Zola returned, she pretended to have lost the drive in a mugging incident, even tearing her own sleeve for effect. She cried crocodile tears, apologizing for failing her dear friend at the last moment. Amara looked at her, not with anger, but with a profound, chilling pity that made Zola's heart skip a beat. "It's okay, Zola," Amara said softly. "I expected as much. I have a backup copy and a printed version already submitted." The silence in the room was deafening as Zola's face transformed from fake grief to genuine, ugly shock. Neka, who had been watching from the bed, stood up, her pretense of friendship finally crumbling. You knew." Neka spat, her voice no longer sugary, but sharp and venomous. The room seemed to grow cold, the air thick with the realization that the game was finally over. "I've known for a long time," Amara said, her voice steady and clear, echoing with a strength she didn't know she had. "I watched you steal from me, lie about me, and try to destroy my future." Zola let out a harsh, bitter laugh, her face contorting into a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. "We hate you, Amara. We hate your face, your luck, and the way everyone looks at you like you're a goddess. You have everything, and we have nothing but your leftovers." Neka screamed, the years of repressed jealousy exploding. They looked at her with such malice that Amara realized they had never truly been her friends. Amara didn't scream back. She simply began to pack her things with a calm, methodical grace. She gathered her clothes, her books, and the few pieces of jewelry they hadn't managed to steal yet. "Where are you going?" Zola demanded, her anger turning into a strange, frantic desperation. Even in their hate, they were addicted to her presence, to the reflected light she provided. "I am going where I can breathe without inhaling your poison," Amara replied, zipping up her suitcase. She felt a weight lifting off her shoulders, a lightness she hadn't felt since she left the village. She called the campus security to escort her, knowing they might try to turn physical in their rage. As she walked out the door, she didn't look back at the two girls who had spent years trying to dim her. The other students in the hallway watched as Amara walked out, her head held higher than it had ever been. She wasn't just beautiful anymore. She was powerful, a woman who had walked through fire and come out tempered. Amara moved into a small, single room on the other side of campus, a sanctuary of quiet and truth. For the first time in years, she didn't have to apologize for her success or hide her joy. She spent her days focusing on her final exams, her mind clearer and sharper than it had ever been. Without the constant drain of their negativity, her academic performance reached even greater heights. She began to see the good men who approached her not as lucky charms, but as people who recognized her worth. She was no longer a naive girl. She was a woman who knew the value of her own spirit. The rumors started to die down when people realized that Zola and Neka were the sources of the lies. The truth, like water, always finds a way to the surface, and Amara's integrity remained unshakable. She looked in her new mirror every morning and smiled at the woman looking back at her. She realized that her beauty was a gift, yes, but her strength was the real miracle that would carry her through. Graduation day arrived, a day of sunshine and triumph that outshone even the matriculation of years past. Amara stood at the podium as the valedictorian, the highest honor the university could bestow. She wore a simple white dress under her gown, her skin glowing with a health that came from inner peace. She looked out at the crowd and saw her parents, their faces wet with tears of pride. In the very back, she saw Zola and Neka, looking tired, bitter, and remarkably ordinary. Without Amara to feed off of, their own internal ugliness had begun to show on their faces, making them look old beyond their years. Amara spoke of resilience, of the importance of choosing friends who celebrate your light rather than try to extinguish it. Her voice was like a healing balm, moving the audience to a standing ovation that lasted for minutes. As she walked off the stage, a prominent human rights lawyer approached her with a job offer that would change her life. Amara smiled, a radiant, blindingly beautiful smile that came from a heart that was finally, truly free. Amara returned to Umuoma not as a victim of envy, but as a beacon of hope for every girl in the village. She funded the building of a new school, ensuring that intelligence would always be celebrated. The people who once gossiped about her now lined the streets to cheer as her car passed by. They saw that her beauty wasn't a curse, but a vessel for a much greater purpose and kindness. Zola and Neka eventually returned to the village too, but the shadows they carried never left them. They lived in the what-ifs, while Amara lived in the I am, her legacy growing with every passing year. She married a man who loved her for her mind first and her face second, a partnership built on mutual respect. Her children grew up knowing that beauty is a responsibility to be kind, not a reason to be proud. In the end, Amara was more beautiful at 50 than she was at 20, for her face was a map of a life well lived. She had ended the toxic cycles, found her freedom, and learned that the brightest light can never be stolen. The story of the girl hated for her beauty became a legend told to every child in the district. It was a cautionary tale about the dangers of envy and the power of a pure and resilient heart. Amara's name became synonymous with triumph, a reminder that your worth is not defined by how others see you. She had navigated the church, the market, and the university, and emerged as gold from the furnace. She often sat under the same Irako tree where she once played as a child, feeling the breeze on her skin. She was at peace with the world, knowing she had faced her enemies and won by simply being herself. The jealousy of others had been a fire that tried to consume her, but it only ended up refining her. She was Amara, the grace of the village, the light of the university, and the queen of her own soul. As the sun set over Omooma, the golden light touched her face one last time before the stars came out. She was free, she was loved, and she was, most importantly, whole. Would you like me to expand on any specific scene or add more dialogue to the encounters between Amara and her friends? Please subscribe, share, comment, and like for more videos.